Hey there DevSquad, today we're going to be showing you how you can set up melee combat. In today's video, we're going to be showing you how you can set up melee combat in Unreal Engine 5. We're going to be breaking down the whole process, starting with showing you how you can set up the animations and the key bindings to actually get your character to move and swing the sword, and then we're also going to show you how you can use blueprints to build a damage system, whereby when your attack is activated, you are going to be able to damage an enemy and take away some of their health. This is going to be a really exciting lesson and I can't wait to show it off to you guys. You can follow along using your own game character, or alternatively, if you want to use our character that we showed off in the locomotion video before, then you are more than welcome to. If you'd like to check that out, links in the description along with all of the resources. If you're excited to see your game character come to life, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button for more videos just like this. Just before we go into this video, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Bodybuilder. With Bodybuilder, you are going to be able to create game-ready, realistic-looking characters, bringing in assets from various different marketplaces to create something which looks absolutely stunning. With it being beta, there is going to be a whole host of new features coming in, such as the Unreal Engine plugin, allowing you to directly import your character straight into Unreal Engine. If you'd like to check this out, make sure you go ahead and check the links in the description. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the video.
Okay, so the very first thing that we need to do then is we need to start importing the animations for this character's attack. If you have animations of your own, then you can follow along with this process. If not, like I said, you can go ahead and download this entire character and all of the animations for this using the link in the description. For me, I've not imported those animations yet, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take these, and what I'm going to do is open these up. And I'm going to take in my two attacks. I have got a blocking and I've also got a slashing. As part of this video, we're just going to be showing you how to set up the slash. However, by the end of this video, you're going to have all of the knowledge that you're going to need to be able to set up the blocking also. So, having said that, what I'm going to do is go ahead and import these into the engine. And we're going to do this in just the same way we did before. I'm going to navigate to the folder I'd like to import them into. And then I'm just simply going to select both of these animations and then drag and drop them into the content browser. From there, I then need to set up the skeleton, so making sure it uses the same game character that we created previously. For me, that is idle_skeleton, and then I'm just going to go ahead and press import all, and this is going to import those animations for me. And once they have imported, what I'm going to do is just very quickly open those up to make sure they are looking exactly as they're supposed to. So let's start off with my attack_slash. We're going to open it up, and as you can see here now, what we've got is we've got our game character, she's slashing the sword, and she is looking really, really awesome. And we're just going to do the same thing for our blocking also. As you can see here, they just go into this stance where they stop moving. They're sort of holding that blade out there, which is absolutely perfect. So now we've got the animations. Let's go ahead and start moving on to the next process. Now, there's a couple of processes that we're going to go through as part of this video. The first one is we're going to be setting up the animation blueprint and adding a animation state, so when a variable becomes true, it is going to play that attacking animation. Now that's the whole animation side of things. And the next thing we're going to move on to is setting up the character blueprint and making sure it's got a key binding and an action mapping for this attack. And when you click it, we're going to be running a little bit of code which is going to tell it to turn that variable to true, and then the animation is going to play the correct animation. And then lastly, what we're going to be doing is showing you how you can set up all of the damage code and setting up a test dummy AI so that you can actually kill it and you can start building your fully fledged combat system. So with that being said then, let's go ahead and move over to the animation state. To do that, I'm going to need to open up my character animation blueprint. So just go ahead and double click on this and open it up. Again, this is just underneath my little animations folder here. With this open, what we're now going to do is we are going to be going over to our state machine, and if you're not in this by default, don't forget you can go up to the breadcrumbs here and then you can go into this. And what we're going to need to do is we're actually going to need to drag out from our locomotion and create a brand new state which is dedicated to attacking. And with this, if we open up this state, what we can do is in our asset browser over here, we can actually feed our attack animation into this. So that's all good and well. So we've now got an attacking state. But what we need to do now is tell the engine when to go into that attacking state. And that's where transitional rules are going to come in. So by default, you can see we've created a transitional rule. The transitional rule, like I said, is simply just going to tell it you can go into it, yes or no. And we can determine those rules by double clicking on the transitional rule, and we can start hooking up Boolean information into the result. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create myself a new Boolean, which is just a true or false data type, by going to the variable, pressing plus here, and we're just going to give this the name attacking. And if that's not working for whatever reason, just give it the name attack. And then what I'm going to do is get a reference to that, and if this attack Boolean that we've just created is equal to true, it's just going to enter that transition, which is perfect. One thing you do need to do is make sure that this variable is set to the Boolean type. And then if you go ahead and compile this, make sure that your default value is false because you do not want this to start attacking by default. So that's all set up. So it can now go into the attacking state. We now need to tell it when it can go back to the locomotion state. So to do that, we're going to create another transitional rule by dragging from attacking to locomotion. But this time, instead of using a Boolean or anything like that, what we're going to do is tell this to automatically go to the locomotion state once the animation has finished. To do that, I'm going to be using an automatic based rule. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to true. Hit compile, and now when it comes to our animation stuff, this is all set up. So if I go to my anim preview editor here, press attack, you are going to see as long as that variable is set to true, she is going to keep attacking, which is perfect. And when I press false, it's going to finish that last attack, and then it's going to stop. So feel free to test this as much as you like. So with that done then, what we now need to do is we need to move on to actually setting up a key binding and feeding that attack variable some data so it knows when to attack. So to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to go up to edit, go to our project settings, and then we're going to go to the input tab. Inside of here, what we're going to do is create ourselves an action mapping. And as you can see here, I've currently got one called attack already, so I'm just going to delete this. You won't have this already. So with that being said then, an action mapping is essentially going to be a key binding or a set of key bindings for a specific action. So I can create myself a action mapping with the name attack. But within this, I can have multiple key bindings. The one I'm going to use is left mouse button. So I'm just going to put that in there. But what you might also want to do is press a little add icon here to also add in things like gamepad trigger. So if you want to be able to use a gamepad to fire off this ability that we're setting up, then you can do that using all of this. That is an action mapping, and the important thing is we can actually now go into our character blueprint, which for us is third person character blueprint, and we can actually directly call this by typing in and searching for our damage. So go over to our event graph, type in attack, which is what we call the action mapping. And now if you press any of those key bindings within that action mapping, you're going to be able to start executing your code, which is just absolutely fantastic because we need to be able to set that variable to true or false when we need to. So what I'm going to do is add a new variable. Again, I'm going to call this attacking, compile this and make sure the default value is false because we don't want this to happen by default. And when we go ahead and press this key binding, we are going to set our attacking to true. And then after a short delay of 1.2 seconds, what we're going to do is we're actually going to set attacking back to false. Now, the reason I've chosen the delay of 1.2 seconds is because that is the time that it is going to take the animation to play. If you have a longer animation, then you're going to need to increase this time. But for now, we've got our key binding, we've got some simple code, and if I go ahead now and move back to our animation blueprint, go over to our event graph, and inside of here, just simply get attacking, and then set our attack over here, just so we can communicate between the character blueprint and the animation. What I can now do is compile this, press play, and I can actually start swinging my sword when I activate this ability, which is absolutely perfect. That is all you need to do when it comes to setting up a simple play animation kind of action mapping thing. There is lots and lots more that we can do to this, such as, for example, you can see when you attack, you can still move. So what you might want to do is go into that blueprint and our key binding stuff here, and we might want to make this a little bit more advanced. So for example, after we set the attacking here, we might want to get the character movement and set the max walk speed to 0, which is going to stop it from moving. And then just put that in just before the delay. And then after the delay, after we stop attacking, then what we might want to do is get a reference to that character movement component and set the max walk speed back to the default, which is 600. And now, if I go ahead and compile and play, you can see now when I go ahead and click, it's going to stop it moving automatically, which is just perfect. So that is absolutely fantastic. There is so much more that you can do with this. If you want to add things like sounds or impulses or anything like that, you can do it all within this blueprint, which is great. So with that being said then, we have got our attacking. What we're now going to do is move on to something which is a little bit more advanced. And by that, I mean we're going to be setting up some blueprints and a damage system to get it so when we attack that sword at an enemy, they are going to drop to the floor and die, which is a lot harder than it seems, but we're going to go through the process very slowly and very easily. If you've got an AI already, that's great, but for this I don't, so what I'm going to do is create myself a new pawn, which is the type of blueprint actor that we're going to use for an AI, and we're going to give us the name test dummy. We're going to open this up, and we're just going to add in a skeletal mesh with the mannequin model that we've got here. Now, the only reason I'm creating this is just so we have a target that we can play with. I need something that I'm going to be able to run up to and start attacking as I see fit. So with that done then, let's go ahead and move on to how we can actually get this to damage. And the way that we're going to be doing this damage is we're going to be using something called an animation notify. And what that's going to allow us to do is it's essentially going to allow us to fire off blueprints when your animation gets to a certain frame. And on that certain frame, it's going to check to see if anything is in front of this character, and if it is, it's going to deal some damage. Now, if that sounds a little bit complicated, don't worry, we're going to be going through all of this. So what I want you to do is open up your attack_slash, and then inside of here, we can see we have got our timeline. Within our timeline, we've got our notifies. And within here, we can right click at any point. The point that I'm going to go for though, is when she starts dropping the sword. And I could right click and add a notify. And that notify could be anything from blueprints, like I just mentioned, or to sound or particle effects or anything like that. But what I'm going to do is create my own new notify, which is going to be running blueprints. And I'm just going to give this the name damage. And if I wanted to, I can drag this to any point on my timeline, but I'm just going to keep it right here in the middle where she starts to bring the sword down. So we've got our notify. That's awesome. How can we attach code to it then? Attaching code to it is really easy. To do that, what we need to do is we need to go over to our character animation blueprint. And then in our event graph, what we can do is we can actually create ourselves an event for anim_notify_damage. So if you remember, an event is going to allow us to fire off any code that we like. But this event is going to be triggered when that notify is struck on the timeline. So what we're going to do here is going to be really, really fun. So what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be creating a bit of a invisible sphere in front of the character. And if anything is within that, we're just going to apply some damage. So we've got to do some blueprint magic to get the location for this sphere, but bear with us, we are going to go through all of this. So from anim_notify_damage, we are going to do a sphere trace by channel. Now you could do a line trace, but the reason I want to use a sphere trace instead, because you're going to have a nice wide swing. So with that being said, I want to make sure I capture as many enemies or objects or actors as I can. So this is going to spawn that sphere in front of the character. I need to say where this sphere starts and where it ends. So what I'm going to do then is, first things first, I want this to start around the player location. So I'm going to right click in here and type in get player character. And then I'm simply going to get the actor location, which is going to give us the location of this player character. So this sphere is going to start here. So we're just putting in that vector value, which is X, Y, Z, which is location, straight into that start. What we're going to do now is tell this where to end the sphere. And we need to end the sphere in front of the character. To do that, we are going to do a little bit of magic. We are going to get the actor location and we are going to add to this. And with this, we are just going to put that into the endpoint. So we're going to take the location, but this start location, what we need to do is figure out which way they're facing and then just push it forwards a little bit. So what I'm going to do is from our get player character, we're going to get the root component, which is going to give us the root location of our character. And then I'm going to get the forward vector, which is just going to tell us which way our character is facing. I'm then going to multiply this. So type in multiply, use the operator multiply. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this forward vector. And with this bottom pin here, I'm going to right click and convert this to a float. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this by 100. And this is how far forward this sphere is going to end. And then I'm just going to put that value into the extra little plus bit here. So with that done, we have now told the engine where to start the sphere and where to end the sphere. What we can now do is start going through the sphere settings, such as the radius. So I'm going to set this to a nice 50. And then I am going to go ahead and enable our trace complex, just so we have good quality collision with that. Our trace channel, for now, I'm going to set this to visible. So that way we're going to be able to see this sphere just for testing purposes. And then ignore self, make sure this is set to true. And if you've got any actors that you want to ignore other than itself, then you could put this into the little array here. But for now, this should be perfectly fine. If I go ahead and hit compile, hit play, swing my sword, what I should see is the little sphere trace spawning in. If you can't, then you might need to just open this up and just find out why. So we've got here, we have got our draw debug type. We need to make sure we set this to persistent or for a duration. Because right now, we're not telling it to draw anything at all. So persistent, hit compile, do this again, press play, swing that sword there, and you can see the radius which is going to be hit by the sword. And you can control this in a couple of different ways. So if I open this up, we have got our radius, which is going to make this wider. So if I set this to something like 100, we can see this is now a really, really wide swing, but I was happy with the 50 value. And what you could also do is move this more forwards by setting this to something like 200 if you want this to be a really long hit. Press play, and there you go. You can see this now is a little bit longer there, which is absolutely perfect. So it's entirely up to you how you go ahead and do this. The values that I like for this is going to be my 120 and my 50 up here. So let's go ahead and test to see if we can hit the enemy. If we go ahead and test this with the cube over here, what you can see is when you hit something, that sphere is going to go green. If we try and hit this enemy, it might go red, and that's most likely because the enemy has no collision. And if I run into this, you can see I can walk straight through it. So therefore, I'm not going to be able to hit it. So what I need to do then is I'm actually going to open up this enemy. So go to it in your content browser. I'm going to open up my test dummy, select my skeletal mesh, and what I'm going to do is go down to where my collision is. And with my collision, I'm just going to set this to block all dynamic. Hit compile. And now that is going to make it so you can't walk through it. But what you can do is notice now you can actually hit it. So when your sword faces in the direction of that, you can see you're able to hit this enemy and you're good to go. So that's awesome. Let's go ahead and set up health for our enemy. And then what we're going to do is show you how to actually apply damage to this enemy. So open up your test dummy. And when it comes to your health, it's just a piece of data. So what we're going to do is add a variable and give this the name health. And for the variable type, we're going to set this to a nice easy float, which is just, again, numerical data. Hit compile. And what I'm going to do is set the default value to 100. Now our enemy has got 100 health. If we go back to our animation blueprint, what we can do is with this sphere trace, anything that it hits, and we can tell what it hits by using the out hit here, we can tell it to apply damage. So what I'm going to do is right click on my out hit, split that so we have access to all of the information such as the location, the normal, the actor, etc. And I'm going to take my out hit actor and I'm simply just going to apply some damage to them. The amount of damage that we're going to apply can be anything from 50, 100, whatever it is you like. I'm going to use 50, so it takes 2 hits to kill this enemy. And we're going to leave all of the rest of the settings as they are. If we go ahead and hit compile, we are now going to be able to apply damage. But what we need to do is open up our enemy again, and we need to tell it what to do when it receives damage. So open up this enemy, and we're going to do event any damage. And then with that, what we're going to do is from our damage here, we can take this out and we can start taking away from our health float. So event any damage, we are going to be setting our health value to damage subtract and into here. So we're going to take our health, we're going to get a reference to health there, and then what we're going to do is we're going to subtract the damage that's incoming and then set it. So health minus the damage, and whatever's left is going to be our new health variable. Now, let's say they get below 100 health. Sorry, let's say they get below 0 health. We need to check to see if that's the case. And we can do this by doing float less than or less than or equal to, and just see if our health is now less than or equal to 0. And if it is, what we're going to do is we're just going to tell it to destroy the actor. Really straightforward. So let's go ahead and test this. Press play, jump in, attack it once, attack it twice, and as you can see there, he disappears and he dies, which is perfect. So we have now got our complete melee combat system. We can add so much more into this, such as sound effects, particles, absolutely anything. One thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take my skeletal mesh here and I'm going to set it to set simulate physics. And what this is going to do is if I set this to true, he's actually going to drop to the floor. So hit compile, hit play, and now hit him once, hit him twice, and as you can see there, he drops to the floor. And it's very much like a proper melee combat system. I'd really love to see what you guys can do with this, but this should be a really good foundation. You can set up things like different types of enemies, different types of animations, different models, different sounds, different particles. I'd love to see what you guys are able to create.
That's it for this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. By now you should have a complete character that is able to move around, swing their sword, and even damage some enemies. And most importantly, you have built this from scratch, having learned all of the game systems that you need to create this. If you'd like to see more videos just like this, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button and hit the little notification bell just to make sure you're staying up to date. I'd also like to take a moment to thank our sponsors for making this video possible. If you'd like to support more videos just like this, make sure you go ahead and check out our Patreon, links in the description. That's it for now though guys, stay awesome, keep creating, Virtus signing out.